Hermann Göring, Adolf Hitler's second in command. Born into a distinguished family, he was charming, flamboyant, and a ruthless manipulator. Göring became addicted to wealth and power, and was willing to obtain it by any means necessary.
He is a killer. He is a murderer, and he seems completely fine with that.
Most people from my generation don't understand how over 70 years ago, a small group of Nazis could start a war that killed 60 million people. I want to find out, and to help me, I'm going to use playing cards. Today, they're used by both the military and law enforcement to help identify their targets. But nobody has ever put together a pack of cards for the most notorious group of killers in history. Working with experts, I want to know where each of these Nazis rank in the hierarchy of evil. My name is James Ellis. This is Hitler's Most Wanted. The thing that sets Göring apart from the other sort of leaders of the Nazi regime was the fact that he was a legitimate First World War fighter ace. He hadn't just served in the front lines, but he'd actually been extremely good at what he did.
There's no doubt if the Third Reich had never happened, Göring would now be remembered as a bona fide German hero, and we wouldn't be talking about him in terms of evil.
He was a decorated, dashing man of action, and that explains his success in World War I, his adulation, and it also explains his attraction to Nazism.
I think there's sometimes a danger with Göring that we focus on this sort of larger-than-life character, but behind that lies this really nasty individual.
But he's got grandiosity combined with a glib superficial charm, conning, manipulative nature, a certain level of cruelty underlying everything. Once you put all these characteristics together, that is getting much closer to what we would consider to be a definition of psychopathy, of the psychopath.
So how did a revered fighter pilot of the First World War become a psychopathic war criminal in the Second? I've come to Germany to find out.
So what is this aircraft?
This is an Auto biplane.
I'm meeting with Joshua Fink, a curator at the Flugwerft Schleißheim Air Museum just outside Munich. I want to find out more about Göring's life as a pilot. Göring started his Air Corps flying career in a reconnaissance plane, just like this one.
How dangerous would it have been to fly one of these things then?
Well, first of all, quite dangerous because the covering is only cloth. A special cloth made and painted with a special glue. The problem is that this glue is not very long water resistant.
Okay, so it could fall apart, you mean, if it rained?
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine how brave you'd have to be to actually fly one of these things. I mean, I feel I could almost put my hand through it if I pressed on this hard enough.
Göring had first enlisted in the infantry. He soon realized there was little glory in trench warfare and managed to transfer himself to the Air Corps.
You've got to remember quite how scary it was being a pilot in the First World War. You know, it was an incredibly primitive form of warfare, incredibly risky. The death rate was appallingly high on both sides.
The planes were so hard to fly that more pilots died during training than in combat. But combat itself was extremely dangerous. In essence, this was the dawn of the dogfight.
If this was in a combat situation, you'd have people shooting at you, and I could see how easily that would be for this thing to come crashing to the ground if it was hit by anything.
It has been their duty to fly and to go into combat. And on the other hand, I think that they have been brave and a little bit crazy. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely could not have done that. No.
Flying reconnaissance was very high risk, but it didn't provide the honor and adoration Göring craved.
He wanted to be seen as heroic, and distinguishing himself militarily would be, he thought, a way to garner that honor and that level of distinction.
The way to gain distinction was by killing the enemy, so Göring transferred to a fighter squadron. Even a severe hip wound didn't keep him out of action for long.
War suits some people, and Göring is one of those people who feels very at home on the battlefield or, you know, on the battlefield in the sky. He loves showing off, he loves being brave. You know, I think he really enjoys war. That's just part of his personality type.
What I'm looking for is an aircraft that Göring flew at the end of the war, and I understand you have one here.
It's just around here at the corner. It's a Fokker D7.
Ah, this guy.
Yep.
Near the end of World War I, aviation technology had advanced by leaps and bounds.
So this is Top Gun 1918.
Yeah, something like this.
Wow. Wow, how technology's changed.
The Fokker D7 was the most advanced plane of its day, far superior to what the Allies had. But pilots still had to be superb multitaskers.
You was moving, and you had to shoot at a moving target in the air, doing a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're not only shooting in the air, you also have to handle your gas, your flaps, your wings, everything.
You're being shot at by other people, and then you've got to get within meters of a target with this aircraft to then have a chance of shooting someone down.
Yeah, that's it. This is crazy enough for everyone.
It's crazy, but it's incredibly impressive.
First World War pilots were known as Knights of the Sky, and for good reason. They were incredibly brave, and they also had this chivalric code that respected each other. But also, they valorized and glamorized themselves.
The fact that Göring managed to shoot down 22 enemy aircraft with this type of aircraft and earlier technology, that really tells me that he must have been a legitimate war hero.
If you want to call him hero or whatever, he has been an absolutely skilled pilot.
Göring's skill and daring was officially recognized. He became one of Germany's most decorated military men. But the medal he's proudest of and always wears around his neck is pour le mérite, for merit.
It's the highest German honor you could be awarded. And anybody who's got that medal is kind of like a celebrity, a rock star, film star of their day. You know, it shows utmost bravery.
I want to find out how Göring came to be such a heroic figure. Where did his bravado come from? I'm in Bavaria in southern Germany, on my way to his childhood home. Göring was born in 1893, and his upbringing was anything but ordinary.
I think this is it. Oh, check this place out.
This is Castle Feldenstein, believed to be almost 1,000 years old, where his family lived until 1913.
It's like a proper medieval castle. I feel like I've been transported back in time to the Middle Ages. Oh, it's just magnificent. I half expect to see an archer leering at me through one of the arrow slits, or even a man-at-arms in full armor up on the battlements. Wow.
I'm meeting with historian Robert Giersch, who can tell me about Göring's time here.
What would it have been like for Hermann Göring to grow up here?
Ich denke, dass die Burg, dass die Wirkung der Burg als mittelalterliches Machtsymbol, dass ihn das fasziniert hat. Diese kühne Lage der Burg auf dem Felsen über dem Tal, das hat ihm sicher gut entsprochen.
Here, Göring played at being a soldier in battle. His family didn't actually own the castle, but from an early age, he believed he was someone special.
Göring, unlike many other senior Nazis, actually came from a distinguished background. But it was a family with a distinguished background that was maybe temporarily embarrassed. And so they often lived on the largesse of Göring's godfather, Hermann Eppenstein. Eppenstein also carried on an affair with Göring's mother.
It's likely his mother's infidelity and his father's acceptance of it influenced the rest of Göring's life.
We use our parents as models, and so that unusual familial situation could have struck him in an exceptional way. Göring had a tendency not to follow the rules very much.
What was it about this castle that Göring liked so much?
Gelände als, ja, vielleicht hat er sich als kleiner Burgherr gefühlt, war dann auch etwas Besonderes unter seinen Schulkollegen und mit seinen Mitschülern, die da unten im Tal wohnen. Das hat ihm wahrscheinlich auch einen besonderen, ja, Status verliehen.
Göring's time at Castle Feldenstein shaped his idea of what a suitable style of living was or should be for a man of his station.
I think it's absolutely fascinating that one of the most powerful Nazis grew up in a beautiful medieval castle. I mean, this thing is stunning, it's grand, it's situated in some of the most beautiful Bavarian countryside. I think being here and just seeing this thing, really, to me, it speaks volumes about Göring the man.
As a boy, Göring dreamed of military glory, and he made that dream come true, becoming one of Germany's top fighter aces. But his glorious war came to a crashing halt when Germany suddenly surrendered.
Göring takes the end of the war really badly. Not only, is his favorite pastime, battle, now over, but also he, like so many other German men of his generation, regards Germany as having been stabbed in the back. He regards, the defeat as utterly unnecessary, and in fact, it's people on the home front that are responsible for the defeat and not the Allies.
Göring deeply resented the terms the victorious Allies imposed on Germany. He was looking for radical solutions, and he soon found them. I'm off to the heart of Munich. It's where Göring met Hitler and began his meteoric rise to the top of the Nazi regime. The relationship between these two supremely powerful men was one of the most destructive the world has ever known.
People were dying, and fascists as well as communists were marching with guns.
Hermann Göring was a war hero and a war criminal. I'm on a mission to find out where Göring ranks in the Nazi hierarchy of evil. I've come to Munich, where his relationship with Adolf Hitler began.
Wow, it really is beautiful.
Like the space it offers in the middle of the city.
I'm here to meet Michael Trammer, a photojournalist who can tell me about Göring's connection to Munich's dark past. He's brought me to Königsplatz, the scene of fascist protests in the 1920s.
Why were far-right groups protesting here specifically?
This place was used for far-right rallies due to its size. They understood themselves as fighting force against leftists.
After World War I, Germany was economically devastated. Extremists on both the left and right were seeking radical solutions.
In Munich, you have an attempt to set up a communist state on the Soviet model. And of course, that provokes an amazing backlash from people who are opposed to that form of government and society.
It's another level of violence. You actually have guns being fired, people being killed for their political beliefs.
For sure, I mean, those were armed fights. People were dying, and fascists as well as communists were marching with guns.
It's here that Göring saw Hitler speak.
It must have just been this incredibly powerful moment for someone like Göring that was interested in that type of politics.
As far as we know, he just encountered Hitler in the crowd, and it must have been a stunning moment for him.
So this is where it all began for Göring and Hitler.
This place was the scene of a turning point in history. Göring later said of Hitler, "God gave the savior to the German people."
Göring finds Hitler attractive because he is a brilliant orator. He clearly, is a man with zeal on a mission, and he seems to have the answers to all of Germany's problems, all encapsulated in this one very dynamic, charismatic personality. Göring, despite being a big personality himself, is completely sucked in and seduced by it.
Like many war veterans, Göring was radicalized.
We have much to learn about the individual characteristics that lead to radicalization. There is some evidence to suggest that low empathy, high impulsivity, low intellectual resources may contribute to some extent. The individual often has trouble fitting in, is trying to find their own identity.
Today, radicalism is on the march again in Germany.
So I know you're a photojournalist and you cover the far right. Do members of the far right today or neo-Nazis congregate here still?
Yes, this is still a place of gathering because of the historical link. I can actually show you a photo from a rally in 2015. You have the group marching in the middle with their Pegida against the Islamization of the Western world banner.
Oh my goodness.
Pegida mobilizes through social media. it's drawn crowds of 25,000. One of its leaders once affected a Hitler mustache and haircut.
They understand the history. They understand the significance of this place to the Nazis. So there's that connection between then and now, that they do the same sorts of things.
It should be in people's mind when they see a picture of Pegida marching down this road, that this is the exact spot where fascists gathered before they took their power.
Covering the demonstrations of the extreme right can be a dangerous business.
I have been attacked just down the road at Karolinenplatz, for example. I was kicked once.
So it sounds like intimidation is a major tactic they use.
Well, yeah, it is intimidation. I mean, one of their chants is Lügenpresse, which means lying press, accusing the press of spreading fake news about fascist movements. And it is intimidating if you have hundreds or thousands of people targeting you directly as a journalist.
That must be really scary.
Being aware that it can be dangerous and that you are seen as one of their enemies is important, but I'm not scared doing my job. I think it would be the wrong thing to be scared. That would be giving in for them.
Pegida is a far-right group determined to claim Germany for Germans only, not unlike Hitler's followers before them. Back in the 1920s, those followers, like Göring, would seek out Hitler at one of his favorite haunts.
And here we have the Haus Neumeier.
Ah, so this is the place.
Yeah.
Dankeschön.
Danke.
That's good. Buon appetito.
Guten Appetit. We're eating pizza and sitting here talking just a few meters away from the place where Hitler and Göring met for the first time.
It's really surreal for me to be at the place where quite possibly one of the most destructive partnerships in history started, and now it's this modest pizzeria.
After getting to know Hitler, Göring committed himself to the Nazi cause, and Hitler immediately took him in to his inner circle.
Göring was important to Hitler in the early days of the Nazi movement because there were certain members of the aristocratic and conservative establishment in Germany who had a lot of disdain for Nazism, but they saw Göring as a Nazi that they could respect and that they could work with.
In the battleground that was Munich in the 1920s, the Nazis relied on an organization called the SA.
The SA was the Sturmabteilung, or the Storm Division, and this was the paramilitary organization of the Nazi Party.
Göring's first assignment from Hitler was to instill military discipline in this gang of thugs. In 1923, he and Hitler, backed by the newly trained SA, tried to take over the Bavarian government in what became known as the Beer Hall Putsch.
It degenerates into a fiasco. There's no real proper command and control. People don't really know who's leading it. And it's Göring who really, tries to rouse these people to keep going forward. He is a real leader of men at this stage, and he's proving himself to be very good at it.
I've come to the place where Hitler and Göring's attempted coup met its violent end.
So this is the Feldherrnhalle.
Yeah, this is the Feldherrnhalle, Field Marshal's Hall at Munich Odeonsplatz.
So what happened here then?
Well, in 1923, Hitler and 2,000 men marched towards the War Ministry that is down the road.
Right.
And they were crushed and stopped by Munich police. There was a shootout. 15 of the Nazis were killed. Göring was wounded here with a shot in the leg, and he was carried away by comrades to get him out of battle. And Hitler, after that, was convicted to jail.
Sustaining an injury for the cause put Göring very high in Hitler's esteem. But after the failure of the coup, Göring fled to Sweden. He'd been given morphine for the pain from his wounds and became addicted.
In addition to his morphine addiction, there are questions about Göring's mental state in those years. He was committed to a Swedish institution, he said, as for treatment for his morphine addiction, but it's possible that he was there for mental health reasons.
Göring was so violent he had to be confined in a straitjacket. But he managed to kick his addiction, temporarily. Hermann Göring was in exile for 4 years. When he finally returned, he inaugurated the Nazi reign of terror. It began in Berlin, and that's where I'm headed.
Here they tortured political opponents. It still causes me shivers.
In the 1930s, Hermann Göring was a rising star in the Nazi Party. I've come to Berlin on my mission to find out where he ranks in their hierarchy of evil.
So where are you taking me?
So James, we are now looking at the foundation of the headquarters of the Gestapo.
I'm meeting with historian Stephanie Fischer to find out how Göring used the feared secret police, the Gestapo, to climb to the peak of power.
Well, this part of the building was used as a prison for the Gestapo during the Nazi years.
I know that Göring established the Gestapo in 1933. What exactly was it, and why did he create it?
Well, the Gestapo became an important tool for the Nazis to destroy its political opponents. They used violence against anybody they felt were their enemies. And the people who were in this prison, they experienced tremendous violence.
Yeah.
The seeds of the Gestapo were sown in 1933, when Germany's parliament, or Reichstag, was set on fire.
Göring was absolutely thrilled the night the Reichstag burnt down. Even when it was happening, he turned up, watched the flames, and he knew that this was representing a massive open door for Hitler to, walk through and to take fundamental, total power. He loved it.
Just 2 months after the Reichstag fire, Göring created the Gestapo.
The Gestapo was trying to rout out anybody who was perceived to be an enemy of Nazism, who represented a threat to the Third Reich. It was a police force that was there to make sure that people, behaved as the Nazis wanted them to behave.
It's terrifying to be standing in this space and knowing that there were maybe thousands of people who were detained here, and they would have been brutally interrogated. I understand that people would have been tortured in this building when it existed.
It still causes me shivers today to be in a side of Nazi terror, right? And it just makes me aware of the fact that we should not take democracy for granted. Part of why the Gestapo was established, it was one of the important tools for the Nazis to destroy its own democracy.
Göring was said to have told his Gestapo, "Shoot first and inquire afterwards. And if you make mistakes, I will protect you." The rules of civilized behavior meant nothing to him. It's a 6-hour drive south from Berlin to the resort town of Bad Wiessee. I'm headed to an old hotel that was ground zero for an infamous killing spree. It turns out that among the first victims of the Nazi reign of terror were other Nazis, the SA or stormtroopers.
It's quite eerie being outside this abandoned hotel. It has such a dark history, but it's located in such a beautiful area.
Tourists are drawn here by its famous spa, the beautiful lake nestled into the Alps, and its peaceful atmosphere. But on a June night in 1934, this place was anything but peaceful. It came to be known as the Night of the Long Knives. It was set in motion by Hitler himself, with Göring's enthusiastic help.
The Night of the Long Knives was a way to purge their rivals within the party and the movement. They thought that the SA had gotten too independent, too big for its britches, and could actually be a rival power base within the Nazi state and a rival power base to Hitler himself.
The SA was led by Ernst Röhm, one of Göring's early mentors in the Nazi Party.
Göring fundamentally betrays Ernst Röhm. He's enough of a pragmatist to know, if he's not going to be liked by Hitler, I'm going to help Hitler get rid of him. It's the ultimate betrayal.
So it really pointed to his ruthlessness and his willingness to do anything to consolidate his power.
The Night of the Long Knives was a murder plot. Be in no doubt about that. This is a plot that sees Hitler drive through the night to a spa town where various members of the SA are staying. He enters into the hotel. It's, they're brandishing weapons, they're brandishing guns.
Röhm and other senior officers were taken away to prison and shot. Today, the Hotel Lederer is slated for demolition. Destroying it would obliterate its terrible history. But how do the people who visit here feel about it?
What do you know about this place?
Ein bisschen. Ja, ich weiß, dass hier diese SA-Leute erschossen worden sind, damals von der SS. Ja, da gab es Streit um die Führung und die Richtung, und Hitler wollte dadurch durch dieses Killing hier die Führungseliten der SA auslöschen.
This place is cited to be demolished. Based on what happened here, do you think it should be preserved?
Aber wer will hier wohnen? Hier will ja kein Mensch wohnen, ne? In so einem Haus mit so einer Vergangenheit.
After the Night of the Long Knives, Hitler moved more firmly towards his ultimate goals: the annihilation of Jews and the Germanization of Europe. I'm headed back to Berlin. I want to find out how Göring helped Hitler achieve his terrible aims.
He is a killer. He is a murderer. And he seems completely fine with that.
I'm in Berlin on my mission to find out where Hermann Göring stands in the Nazi hierarchy of evil. One of the most imposing buildings in Germany, the former headquarters of the Luftwaffe, is a monument of sorts to Göring. To find out more about it, I'm meeting with historian Nick Jackson.
This is the Air Transport Ministry. So if there was a seat of Göring's power,
This would have been it.
this would have been it. In 1936, Göring had the whole block demolished and built what was Europe's largest office. There are 2,300 offices in here. The head of the Luftwaffe, that would have been something that he would have been hugely proud of, very involved in. You know, he rebuilds the Luftwaffe from scratch to this fighting force ready to go in 1939.
By the time war broke out, Göring had created the best air force in the world. The Luftwaffe planes could fly faster, climb faster, and accelerate faster than most of the aircraft they were up against. Many Allied pilots never saw their attacker coming.
It was essentially Göring's big dream. You know, he was a pilot, he loved planes, so the idea he now had his own pet air force, well, that's the best toy a man like Göring could possibly have.
He's a busy man. You think of all the titles that he had, but he certainly would have spent time in this building. In fact, that would have been the main office.
Oh, that right there, those windows?
With the large windows.
All those windows are one room.
Yeah.
And that was his office.
That's the main office of the for the building.
He definitely had an office to match his ego.
Other than Hitler, he's the most powerful man in the country.
Throughout the 1930s, as Göring's power increased, so did his taste for the good life. He was developing a hearty appetite for all of life's pleasures.
This looks like a good place.
Yeah, let's go here.
Nick is taking me for a Göring-style meal, where I hope to find out more about Göring's character and how he helped Hitler achieve the Germanization of Europe.
It's funny, when I think of Göring, I think of this fat buffoon dressed in an absolutely ridiculous uniform and indulging in excessive opulence. He was clearly a man of many appetites.
Definitely. I mean, you can see by the size of the man that he was a keen eater. I think that would have been something that was very important in Göring's life.
If Göring was sitting here with us now, what would that be like?
I think he'd be doing most of the talking, and he would have eaten all the food. He's a very dominating character. I mean, it's all about Hermann. He wanted the attention.
Yeah.
You know, sort of standing on top of the mountain, higher than everybody else, and everyone would look and think, that is a great man.
He takes vanity to a whole new level.
Definitely, definitely. I think it's probably fair to say that in every aspect of his life, he was extravagant and boastful and completely over the top. But also perhaps the most likable of the Nazis. But always in the background, you've got that cold murderer, a man who is deeply involved with horrendous Nazi crimes.
The crimes against Jews are the most well-known Nazi atrocities. They began in the 1930s, when persecution of the Jews was official Nazi policy. Before the Holocaust, there was Kristallnacht.
Kristallnacht, Night of Broken Glass, was a night of coordinated violence against Jewish property and Jewish people throughout Germany and Austria. Synagogues set on fire, stores looted, and people rounded up and sent to concentration camps.
Göring, with his boundless greed, did not actually approve of the destruction of property.
In fact, with Kristallnacht, he would have preferred killing more Jews, but preserving some of the valuable items and objects and buildings.
He actually told the Jews that they should pay for the damage themselves. I mean, that shows you quite how revolting a specimen he was.
Kristallnacht was only the beginning. Göring was responsible for the order to organize the practical details of the Holocaust.
In 1941, Göring signed a memo authorizing the coordination of the so-called final solution to the Jewish question, the systematic extermination of Jews. Göring's memo authorizing the coordination of mass extermination is a huge step of the development of Nazi policy from persecution to genocide.
The Holocaust has many fathers, but Göring is one of the most significant of all these figures. What's so sort of especially hateful about Göring is that he's not a kind of virulent anti-Semite at heart. He's carrying out anti-Semitic policies in order to advance his own political career.
The fact that he would be willing to be a part of these atrocities simply for personal gain is truly terrifying.
I feel you could be almost disarmed by Göring's eccentricity, that he's this larger-than-life character. He's involved in all these ridiculous excesses, but he was an evil man.
He is a killer. He is a murderer, and he seems completely fine with that.
Göring's willingness to do anything for Hitler made him indispensable. But in 1939, Hitler revealed that he planned to invade Poland, and Göring tried to talk him out of it.
Why was he so against Germany starting the Second World War?
If Germany loses, he loses all of the power, the houses, the uniforms, the glory, the medals, the position that he'd worked so hard and so ruthlessly to achieve. The most important thing for Hermann Göring was Hermann Göring.
Hitler ignored Göring's views and declared war, but named Göring as his eventual successor and Marshal of the Empire. It was the latest in a long list of titles Göring accumulated. He collected them like others might collect autographs. The more, the better. Göring was at the height of his powers, but could he keep his lofty position? That's what I want to find out next. I'm 70 kilometers north of Berlin, inside one of Europe's largest nature reserves. It used to be the site of Karenhall, Hermann Göring's vast country estate.
What's this? This here?
What's a stone? You found a lot of this.
So this is an original piece of the building?
It's original.
So what is this? Do you know? Like from the
wall.
house? It's part of the wall?
It's a wall, yeah.
Wow.
I'm meeting with Volker Knopf, historian and an authority on Karenhall. He can tell me how important this place was to Göring during World War II.
That was Karenhall here.
Uh-huh.
Around here was a guardhouse,
Uh-huh.
and the same on this side. And here where the trees are. If you look on the trees, then you see the walls of the house.
So the main building was right
Ja,
here?
soweit das Auge reicht.
So it's been completely engulfed
Sehr groß.
by the forest.
Ja. Aber damals war hier ein Park, ein großer Park, keine Bäume oder nur wenige Bäume.
There's little evidence any buildings were ever here. Just a few tunnels remain.
Alle Häuser waren verbunden durch solche Gänge.
So this was a passage between two buildings to move supplies.
Ja, ja. Und in dieses Loch kann ich gefahrlos mit Ihnen runtergehen. Es wird...
You can step in that.
Me, I know it. For you.
Oh, wow, look at that. There's no way I'm going in there.
Karenhall, named after Göring's deceased wife Karen, began as a simple hunting lodge. By 1937, after years of renovations, it was a palatial complex. It had everything Göring could want, including a massive library, ballroom, swimming pool, even a private zoo. Göring wanted the estate to be known as a shrine to Karen. In reality, it was a shrine to himself.
This is a playground fit for what he regards himself almost like now a prince. So this is his own sort of palace, and it fits his ego.
Komm, ja, mein Cäsar. Kommst du mich besuchen?
Karenhall recreated the conditions of the good life and of the style of living befitting a man of his station that he'd learned at Castle Feldenstein in his youth. He held parties there, he entertained foreign dignitaries there. It was really where he lived an extravagant, opulent life.
Karenhall was crammed with art masterpieces, looted from occupied Europe, one of the grandest private collections in the world. it was also his unofficial office, where his staff would come from Berlin to get their orders.
What do you think about Göring?
War das joviale Gesicht des Nationalsozialismus. Aber konnte heute oder in dieser Minute die Wange seines Kindes und eine halbe Stunde später konnte ein Todesurteil unterzeichnen. Das war Göring. Hatte viele Gesichter.
The beginning of World War II was good for Göring. The Nazis scored victory after victory with his Luftwaffe leading the charge. Then came setbacks.
It was Göring's job to destroy the British Air Force, the Royal Air Force, in order to make way for the German invasion barges and then the overall invasion of the British Isles. Now, this never happened because the Luftwaffe failed at their job and the RAF managed to outwit Göring. It was a terrible failure for him.
Göring had solemnly promised Hitler no bombs would ever fall on Germany.
The other big failure of Göring and his Luftwaffe is the fact that the RAF managed to bomb the Ruhr, Germany's industrial heartland. Göring, one of his old fighters, has now failed him twice. This actually is the beginning of Göring's slide into, nothingness in the Nazi regime.
Göring was increasingly isolated from the inner circle and increasingly retreated to Karrenhal and to his life of pleasure and opulence.
Hat in seinen Memoiren geschrieben, wenn man Karrenhal betrat, hatte man das Gefühl, als herrsche tiefster Frieden. Hat hier gelebt, als wäre ihn herum kein Krieg.
Göring was still trotted out on ceremonial occasions, but even that rankled his Nazi colleagues. Joseph Goebbels wrote, "Bemedaled fools and vain perfumed fops have no place in our war leadership. It's effeminate behavior given the current situation."
Towards the end of the war, as the Reich starts falling apart, well, so does Göring. And he retreats into his own sort of kind of make-believe world, stuffed with looted and plundered art, complete with all sorts of baubles, a chest full of medals. I mean, he cuts an absurd figure. And also, he's hopelessly addicted to drugs. Essentially, what you've got is a fat, drug-addled, dipsomaniac, who has lost any respect.
But Göring still harbored delusions of grandeur.
Towards the end of the war, Göring sent a message to Hitler where he essentially said, if I don't hear from you by a certain time, I'll assume you're unable to fulfill the duties of Führer, and I'll take over control and command of the Reich. Hitler regarded this as an extreme act of betrayal, and it was really the final nail in the coffin in terms of Hitler's relationship with Göring.
As the Russian army approached, Göring moved his plundered possessions to safety and fled, ordering Karrenhal to be destroyed.
Göring resigned to the Americans and expected to be treated as the representative of a defeated power. Instead, he was arrested for war crimes.
One of the things I find most interesting about Göring is when he was finally captured, he supposedly believed that he deserved a parade rather than to be convicted. One possibility is that his increased drug use had led to just increasingly delusional thought processes.
Göring is sentenced to death, and he knows he's going to be hanged. But actually, he's still got one more card up his sleeve, and he plays it actually very well. He's got a suicide pill. His body is discovered when a guard looks through the hatch in his cell, and there is Göring's dead form. His face is set in a kind of horrible rictus grin, as if he's having the last laugh.
My trip to Karrenhal has given me the last piece of the puzzle that is Hermann Göring. Now it's time for me to finally determine where this complicated character fits into Hitler's hierarchy of evil.
He murdered and plundered his way across Europe, and he murdered and plundered his own people.
My visit to Germany has helped inform my understanding of Hermann Göring's position in the Nazi hierarchy of evil. Now it's time for us to decide where he should be placed in our unique pack of cards. The same kind of pack that law enforcers use today to identify their most dangerous killers. This is Hitler's Most Wanted.
Guy, what's your impression of Göring as a person?
Frankly, I find it a little hard not to be seduced by him. I think he has an enormous amount of charm.
And that's what makes that personality so dangerous, is the fact that he can charm you, he can trick you, he can pull one over on you, and he can send you to a concentration camp.
Göring used charm to mask his brutality. He saw himself as a dashing man of action and a subtle diplomat who could turn every situation to his advantage.
One location to me that really exemplified his personality was Hall, which at the time was this incredibly opulent pleasure palace. Anthony, why was Göring so obsessed with opulence?
Göring had a very particular idea of appropriate living for a man of his station. The idea was formed in his youth, living at Castle Feldenstein, and he tried to realize it in Hall.
I think that's absolutely right. He was a big personality, and he had very, very greedy tastes. You know, he liked his food, he liked his drink, he liked his morphine, and he liked his works of art. So, in many ways, he was like this big monster that just needed to suck in as much stuff as he could, and it never ended.
What was his motivation?
I think, in absolutely succinct terms, he was a thief. When he got a chance to aggrandize himself and enrich himself, he took it.
Göring killed innocent people to maintain power and the wealth and luxury that came with it. He was ruthlessly ambitious, undermining rivals on his climb to the top.
I think there's sometimes a danger with Göring that we focus on this sort of larger-than-life character, but behind that lies this really nasty individual.
Immediately after Kristallnacht, Göring sets to work coming up with ordinances to dispossess Jews, strip them of money and of assets. So we really see that nasty scheming in the service of Nazi anti-Semitism right in that example.
For Göring, anti-Semitism was a practicality. He wasn't actually, I don't think, a convinced anti-Semite.
To some extent, that makes you wonder, it makes me wonder, why is he doing the things he's doing? He's doing them for personal gain. He really is using the atrocities as a tool. To some extent, that, to me, suggests a greater evil.
So what I'd like to do now is figure out where Göring ranks in the Nazi hierarchy of evil. So Matt, if you want to go first.
Well, I think psychologically he's up there. I give him a 4.
Anthony?
He was central to the early rise of the Nazi Party. He was central to remilitarization. He was central to the early successes in the war. Add to all of that his direct responsibility for the so-called final solution, and we have to rank him at number 4.
Guy?
I'll put him at 4 as well, because he murdered and plundered his way across Europe, and he murdered and plundered his own people.
So you guys have a unanimous consensus, and based on my experience exploring his story in Germany and our discussion here, I'm going to agree. He is number 4. He is the ace of clubs.
4th in the Nazi hierarchy of evil, Hermann Göring had a hand in almost all of that regime's crimes. He bears enormous responsibility for the horrors that befell millions of innocents.